Hello, I'm Rob Kerry. I've been involved in SEO basically since the industry began, and currently work at Resignal, which is an e-commerce SEO agency, and before that I worked at Kingfisher Group. Now, I'm a bit of a geek. I've taught myself HTML when I was 13, Perl and PHP at 14, and I built a hosting company running thousands of websites. I'm still sort of coding today. So I absolutely love the internet, but I've also become a bit of a realist. So working at a company such as Kingfisher, which owns 10 big brands, one of which has over 800 retail stores, things happen slowly, but when they do happen, it can result in big revenue gains. So one of the things that I prioritised at Kingfisher was the speed and performance of our website, but why does speed matter? Now, if you're someone in the hyper luxury space, such as Rolex or Gucci, then potentially, speed isn't the most important thing. People come to your website because they expect the glossy brochure kind of style, the high resolution video. They're willing to wait for that. But if you're not in hyper luxury, then speed is very important. It helps with SEO and it helps with revenue as well. Now, there's countless case studies about it. Here are a few of them. So Furniture Village, for example, they reduced their page loading time by 20%, and it resulted in a 15% SEO traffic growth and 12% revenue increase. Vodafone, I think this was over in Germany, they improved their LCP by 31%, and I'm going to be talking about LCP in just a moment. That resulted in an 8% increase in sales and 11% extra add to cart clicks. TUI, the travel company over in Sweden, they looked at the correlation between mobile speed and bounce rate, and they found that as they dramatically improved the mobile page speed, it dramatically reduced the bounce rate as well. So there's a direct correlation there. So how do you actually measure the performance and the speed of your site? Now, there's something called Web Vitals, and these are about 8 to 10 different metrics which you can use to measure sort of the quality and performance of your web page. Now, the numbers themselves can be quite complicated, so Google's made it a lot easier. They split it down into 3 categories. Your page is either good, poor, or needs improvement within those metrics. So if you're looking at what are the most important metrics, Google's picked out 3, which they call their core Web Vitals. And currently those are LCP, FID, and CLS. Now, these can change. They have changed in the past, and they will be changing as well. So in terms of what these are, let's start off with LCP. So LCP is largest contentful paint. This is basically measuring the render time on your website from when it first starting to load to the largest element on the visible page loading. So that could be a big hero image, or it could be a big block of text if you don't have a large image on the visible page. There's FID, which is first input delay. This is the response time to when someone clicks on a link, or they hover over on something, or they interact for the first time on your web page. So an example here is I go to the M&S homepage, I hover over the kids category, and the mega nav drops down. And when that drops down, that's the interaction which is measured. And there's also CLS, which is cumulative layout shift. Now, this is about unexpected shifts in the page as it loads. So this can be annoying. You might have noticed it if you're on a mobile device. You try to load a page, you try to click on something, and as you go to click, the page moves and you click on the wrong thing instead. That's seen as a very bad user experience, so this is also measured to see sort of how much your page shifts around as it loads. And common issues for e-commerce sites with this is cookie consent banners, where they push the page down, or quite often sort of free delivery banners that you might have across the top of your page, which might also push your content down. In this example, we've got the Adidas homepage, where it takes quite a while for the images at the top to load, so you can kind of click on these navigational content links, but as you go to click, the large images finally load and push those links down, so you could click on the wrong thing. Now, I was saying that these can change over time, and in March next year, FID as a vital metric is going to be replaced by something called INP, which is very similar to FID. It basically measures all interactions on your page, though. So it might be that clicking a link on your page is very fast, but there might be a heavy JavaScript element on a page which is actually quite slow. So Google's looking at all these different elements on a page that you might interact with and how much that will slow you down. Now we're going to be talking about page speed. So there's 2 types of page speed. There's the generic term, PageSpeed, which just means how quickly your page loads from start to finish. And then there's the Google name of PageSpeed, which is without the space. And Google PageSpeed is a performance report, which includes many different metrics, including core web vitals. You might have heard about Lighthouse as well. Lighthouse is basically a Chrome extension which allows you to test the performance of your page locally. So let's say you've got a staging server which isn't open to the outside world. You're still able to test the performance of that page as you make changes. PageSpeed is basically like Lighthouse, apart from it runs from a Google data center, just like Googlebot, and it also includes real user data as well. So this is data from the Google Chrome browser, which gets sent home to Google, and then Google then distributes that information out. So in terms of what to use, Lighthouse is really ideal for your front-end developers. So if you're looking to tweak the templates on your pages, then your front-end developers should be running Lighthouse tests constantly to see if they change something, what happens to the performance of that page. Whereas PageSpeed Insights reports are more designed for once the page is live, looking to test it over a certain amount of time and looking at what real users have as an experience on your website as well. So where you can find these, you can go to the Google Chrome store and download the Lighthouse extension. Or if you want to test your live website, you can just go to pagespeed.web.dev. These are free tools available from Google. Now, if you're a geek, you might want to automate this. So the PageSpeed Insights tool has an API. You can run up to 25,000 reports a day. You probably don't need to run 25,000 reports, but you can use this as a way to automate your benchmarking, and it also allows you to monitor competitor sites as well. So something that we did at Kingfisher was we used the PageSpeed Insights API to monitor our homepage, our PLP, and our PDP, but also that of 10 competitors in each country that we worked in. So we could see not only how our pages did over time, but also how competitors did as well. There's also an API for Crux data, which is the Google Chrome data about real users interacting with your website. You can use this API as well to understand over time how people get on with using your website and your web pages. There's already a free tool available for monitoring this over time, though, which is in Google Search Console. There's the Core Web Vitals section. Of course, this only includes data about your website, not competitors, but it's still quite useful, and it shows you how many of your URLs are good, needs improvement, or poor. There's commercial alternatives to using Google Search Console. One of them, which the professional speed consultants usually use, is GT Metrics. This allows you to monitor your website from different places all over the world, different devices, different situations, very useful for troubleshooting issues which might only happen in one country but not another. There's also Calibre, which is a reporting tool, which is very useful for talking to your stakeholders and for them being able to see what impacts performance has over time. So these are some tools you may want to consider. But if you're looking to diagnose why your site isn't as performing as well as you want it to, where do you start? Well, in e-commerce, you're probably going to be looking at your home page, your PLP template, and your PDP pages as well. So let's look at some real-life examples of well-known stores and some of the issues they face. So we're starting off with the homepage of Hobbycraft. I'm sure everyone knows Hobbycraft. My family loves Hobbycraft. We spend a lot of money in Hobbycraft. So first of all, it looks very good. They've passed their Core Web Vitals assessment, so happy days there. But in terms of the PageSpeed performance score, it's actually quite low, around 38%. So wondering, what is causing that? Well, despite them having around 40,000 lines of HTML in their homepage, that's not the issue. That's only taking 378 milliseconds to load. That's not a lot. What we see at the top here is script evaluations. That's JavaScript. There's some chunky JavaScript there which is slowing down the performance of that page. And that doesn't always have to be JavaScript which is running your website. It could be third-party code. So at the top here is one of the biggest contributors to that slowness is their actual e-commerce platform, Salesforce Commerce Cloud. And that's perfectly fine. It's running their website. It should be there. But then down below, we can see that Google Tag Manager is loading lots of different JavaScript tracking systems, such as TikTok, despite me going direct to the site. Is that really needed? Hundreds of different sort of JavaScript files could potentially be loaded from this Google Tag Manager container. So we need to look at, are they actually needed? Globally isn't really helping them either. Globally is a great provider for helping your e-commerce store to sell to different countries, it converts the currency, it helps you with logistics, etc. But the assets that which they're loading on the Hobbycraft homepage in order to achieve this are actually really sort of slowing their site down. So if I was working at Hobbycraft, I'd be looking at the homepage and saying, is all this JavaScript really needed? Is every third-party integration needed on that homepage? Maybe it's only needed on, say, the cart or the checkout page, or if I actually came from a specific social or ad platform, maybe I need the tracker on just for those visitors. And I'll also look at asking my tech suppliers to up their game as well, which is something we did at Kingfisher. We had a cookie consent provider who had quite a slow JavaScript solution. So we worked with them to try to improve that. And they're willing to do that because they don't want to lose your custom. So how you can fix some of these things is by sort of cascading your JavaScript and your CSS on your website. So there's going to be some code which is vital for every single page on your site. So you can include that in your main JavaScript and CSS file. But there's also going to be some code which only is needed for the homepage, only needed for categories, only needed for the checkout, only needed for the basket. And in those situations, you just need to load that JavaScript and CSS for those individual pages, which means that if you're landing on the homepage, then you don't have to download all this stuff which is only needed when you actually get to the checkout stage. Here's another site which my wife likes shopping at, Joe Brown's. It's kind of like alternative kind of clothing. Again, quite poor performance score at 26%. And when I was looking at this, I was assuming probably too many cooks spoiling the broth in this situation. So what's happening here is they're actually loading 11 different custom font files on their homepage, only a fraction of which are actually used. So what I'm guessing is probably happening here is people are creating seasonal campaigns, putting it up on the homepage, taking them down, but then still continuing to load the assets which were used for those old campaigns. So it's really important to have good page hygiene, to remember to remove these things which aren't needed anymore on your pages. Also, their images aren't being lazy loaded. This is such an easy, quick win, where you just need to put the attribute loading equals lazy on your image tags, and if that image isn't being shown to the user, if it's below the fold, then the browser won't actually load it until the user's about to scroll that into view. That can make a web page so much faster, and they're not using this at the moment. Now, we were talking about Gucci before. Luckily, this is not a shop which my wife shops at. But unsurprisingly, they fail their Core Web Vitals assessment and majorly fail the new metric which is coming in March, which is INP, Interaction to Next Paint. They also have issues with CLS, and that's caused by the fact the page shifts around so much as you're loading it. The logo and navigation bar almost sort of animate as it loads. So it's partly caused to that JavaScript, but also because they don't fix the width and the height of elements within their page using CSS. If they did that, then it wouldn't shift around so much. So again, quite an easy fix for them. We're going to move on to some PLPs now. So let's have a look at the North Face. Now, their PLP has failed Core Web Vitals, but not in a majorly way. But what you can see is, whilst CLS has only just about failed, Interaction to Next Paint, the new metric, which will be introduced as a Core Web Vital in March, they're majorly failing that. And what they're doing is they're actually using JavaScript to lazy load instead of the inbuilt browser way of doing it. And the initial page load is quite fast, but as you scroll down the page, you get this horrible loading image like we're in like 1996 or something, and you have to wait for the rest of the page to then render and the rest of the images to render. So whilst they think it's a nice way of making the web page fast, it's actually just making it a really bad user experience, and that's going to hurt them for this new metric coming out as well. One of the other things they're doing is they're using incorrect image sizes. So they're rendering the image as 314 by 314 on their PLPs, but the actual image size is 450 by 450. This is really easy to fix because they probably use a DAM, a Digital Asset Manager, to render these. If not, your CDN will be able to do it for you. And Google's estimating that on a 4G mobile connection, they would actually make the page 1.6 seconds faster. So just something as simple as that can make a major impact. They're also not using image caching. So these are product images. Those images are probably not going to change that much, but they're telling a browser when you load the page that this image might change in 18 minutes. So make sure you download it again if I revisit this page 18 minutes later or an hour later. Whereas in actual fact, probably these images stay the same for months. And even if they did add a new product image, they'd probably give it a different name. So It's really important to make sure that you use your digital asset manager or your CDN to set really high cache limits on images to say this probably won't change in the next 30 days. And if you do that, the browser will store a copy of that image and not have to download it going forward. Now we're looking at richer sounds, which is still quite big today, used to be huge. We're looking at their 4K TV page, and we've mentioned a few of the issues here already about some of the issues they're facing, but we haven't talked about next-gen image formats. Now the image on the left is a JPEG, the image on the right is WebP format, basically exactly the same quality, but the JPEG is 65 kilobytes and the WebP is 11 kilobytes. So just using different image formats is going to make these images so much faster to load. We're going to move on to PDPs now, and we're looking at the Sony store. This is another 4K TV page, and again, quite poor performance at 22%. And sometimes it's just as simple as setting the width and height on images. This can actually make a big effect on both your CLS score, because your page doesn't jump around so much, and also in rendering the page as well, because the web browser already knows, without downloading the image, how big that image is going to be. So it can help in two different ways there. But most of the time, it ends up being JavaScript. So as you can see, all the things boxed in pink here are JavaScript-related issues. Now, JavaScript isn't like sort of a big bad thing. It's needed in some elements of the website, but you just need to make sure that it is actually adding something to the page before you load it. We're looking at Sephora now, which is kind of a newcomer to the UK, big in the US. It's got a score of 28%. And it's partly caused because they're having render blocking issues. And if you look further down the list here, you can see it's Adobe Typekit, which is basically font files loaded via JavaScript. And the reason for this is they're basically saying to the web browser, don't load the rest of the page until you've downloaded this JavaScript file, which then downloads these font files. So it slows the render of the page down. What they can do is use either async or defer on these script tags. Async means feel free to download this stuff whilst you're also working on the HTML, and then just stop whilst you execute the JavaScript to work out how it works. Defer is saying this JavaScript really isn't that necessary for being able to view the page, just load it after the page is rendered. So it depends what that JavaScript's doing, but both of these things can really help you. Slightly harder with CSS files. There's a trick around it where you can tell the web browser, don't load this until the page is actually rendered, then load the CSS. Obviously not great if it's a CSS file which is really needed for the image of the page, but if it's something which is kind of like post-loading in CSS, then you could load it later on. And with fonts as well, you can use rel equals preload. That basically means that the web browser can load those fonts in advance. It's not hanging around until once the page is rendered before it actually looks to download and implement those. There's also in CSS something called font display equals swap. That means that the web browser will use one of its existing fonts, one of its default fonts for the page until it's actually downloaded that custom font, and then it will swap it for that custom font. Some designers don't like that because they want the page to look a certain way from the very beginning. But, oh, I've got a cut-off image here. Ultimately, Google PSI, Google PageSpeed Insights gives you all the answers. You don't need any fancy consultants or any fancy tools. You can just do it for free using this tool, and it will give you the answers. It will say why your site is slow, and it will give you the solutions to fixing them as well. And you don't have to have the perfect page either. This is a look at the biggest retail websites in the UK, and as you can see, there's a lot of red on there. There's a lot of yellow. You know, people like Amazon aren't necessarily doing a great job. You know, you don't have to worry about that. The main thing is just making it the best it can be for your users, and also making sure that you're faster and better than your competitors as well. Thank you very much.